So hey guys, I'm Abhishek from Trado. So my today's talk will be on calendar. So once in a while there is a feature request for us like to build a calendar, and then we are like thinking how can we start with it. So when we first think of calendar, the first thing comes is like, oh wow, there are lots of dates, months, year. We have to think lot about that, and how can we make a great UI with dates and all that stuff. So the first thing comes to mind is, so let's say we start implementing the calendar itself, right? So we go to our code console, we start with today's date, and then we are thinking, okay, so let's first map a month, right? So we take the date from the date object, and then we start iterating over it, and then we come to think, okay, so this month has 30 days. Okay, so the next month it might have 31 days. Then there is one more month which surprise has 28, 29 days. So it has a 4-year cycle around it. So a lot of logic starts coming into place. So we get questions like, how can we make sure that the calendar which we implement is bug free, error free, so that the client like he's selecting a date and he's like, अरे February में तो 30 दिन आ गए. So that doesn't happen, right? So we'll start with few examples, like two main examples. One would be a weekly calendar, another would be a monthly calendar, and we will see like how we can implement it with very like in an easy way. The thing is, the first when you start implementing calendar, it seems a bit daunting, but it's actually quite easy. It's not that complex. Once you know the tips and once you know the tricks about it, it becomes very easy. So even if you go to a library, let's say you want to implement some calendar, you are like, "Bhai, मैं तो नहीं कर रहा. I am getting a library and just implementing that." But the thing is like, your manager asks, "No, I want this customization. I want that. I want date to look like this." So you start, try to customize your implementing styles, and most often times it happens that you are just writing a lot of customization code and the styles are not up to the mark, right? So it's just best idea to start ground up, and building calendar is not that hard, trust me. Okay, so the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, so let's start with date object. But as you can see, the date object has very limited functionality. It gives you very limited functions, limited utils to work with, and the approach to convert a date to a number and then do certain operations on it is not that good approach, right? So what will happen is like you will have to think a lot about other error boundaries, other edge cases, uh, and when you are trying to navigate through, so let's say you have a calendar and you have some button to go to next month, previous month, then you start thinking like, how can I do it very effortlessly. So the issues start popping up when you have to control the calendar. You have to directly navigate to a specific year and all that stuff. So it's better to have some sort of helper library to achieve this. So working with dates. So we are already working with dates, manipulating dates. So let's just use that to build our calendar. There are quite few libraries which are famous working with dates. One of them is Moment, another is Date FNS, other is Day.js. So we can actually utilize these libraries to build a calendar, and these libraries have a lot of util functions, lot of plugins that really help to build an amazing calendar. So in this example, we are going to use Day.js. So Day.js has an amazing API, lot of utils, lot of plugins to work with. Has amazing playground. We'll take a look at the playground later on, and then lot of plugins. Okay. So let's move on to our code. So this is one example of a weekly calendar.
Can you zoom in the code?
Yeah. Okay. So let's first go through the example, and then we'll take a look at the code, like how we can achieve this. So as you can see, we have marked the today's date. There is a entire week of dates. We can select any one date, and there are controls to go to the previous and next week. So at first it seems, yeah, we can try to implement this, but later on as you go, so all the dates, everything is just working fine. There is no need to worry that it will break or something like that. So let's check out the code how we can achieve this. It's quite simple actually. Okay. So as you can see, the markup is like just few lines of code, so nothing much, and the logic is just this much, nothing extraordinary and nothing that sort. So let's take a look what we have here. So this is basically a day simple constant. So we can have our labels, day labels on top of our calendar. And once we have that, so let's take a look. The one approach is having some sort of marker with you. So marker acts like a beacon for your calendar. So whenever you are trying to control the calendar, you actually change the marker rather than directly manipulating the entire array of dates, right? So you change the marker and you derive dates from that marker. So we have followed that approach. So by default our marker is set to today, and that seems meaningful. Then we have certain states to manipulate the controls of the calendar. First, we map week from our today this thing start of the week. So again, so how do we get the start of the week? So we get the marker. Then what is this function? So marker is actually a today object, which is a day.js object. So day.js has quite a couple of quite a few utils which are very helpful. So the start of the week gives us, so basically if you can just hover it, it will show you what it shows, what it gives. So the thing is, uh, week doesn't start like the first day doesn't start on Monday, right? Like we have some sort of offset to it. So we need to get the starting day and we need to manipulate according to it. So a trivial approach would be to just add, integers and add numbers and try to work with that. But right now we should be thinking in dates, right? Whenever you are manipulating dates, you should think like a calendar. So what it actually means is when you are adding a day, you are adding a day to the day.js object itself. So that is the marker object. You are not actually adding the number to it, right? You are adding the date to you are adding the day itself to the date object and then getting the number from the new object. So this is what exactly is happening here. So if you take a look at the increment function, so what we are doing is we are taking the marker, we are adding one, and we are just adding a unit to it. So in this case, since we are doing a week wise shuffle, the unit is week, right? So this is the unit we are passing here. So I want to add 1 week on each button click. So that is happening. So let's say I wanted to shuffle for month. So I can just change my unit to this thing. So now it will shuffle through months. So now it's December 20. Okay, let me just redo. Oh, dev server was not working. Great. All right. So now we have changed our unit to month. So when we hit previous, actually the entire month increments. When we go to next, the entire month increments. So now we don't have to now we don't have to worry about incrementing a single number into a date. The entire date object is being shifted around, and that date object is the marker object which I mentioned earlier. So that is how how simple it is to implement this. So again we have increment, decrement, same. Let's say I want to increment it by here, right? So now I'll get increment. So this is just a simple UI. You can have one drop down there. You can toggle through. You can switch through years that way. So the main concept what I was trying to convey here is the main logic behind making the calendar. It is quite very simple. All you have to do is write some functions, have a marker to track your date, and that's it. Other things are just styling and all that. You can customize any way you want it. So that's the main thing. This is for the weekly calendar. It's quite easy to implement since you just have to show one row with 7 units in it. Let's move on to monthly calendar now. Monthly calendar has a bit of manipulation to it since we have to display a grid of dates. So yeah, another thing is let's say you want to show. Let's move on to. Okay, it's not toggling. So let's toggle week wise. Okay, so as you can see, Now I'm adding a extra zero to the single digits. So this is the simple way to do is that we just pad zeros at the start. Another this thing is you can directly use the day object which you are getting, which you have already made available in your view. So you can just add a format to it, and it will start showing in whichever format you provide. So let's say I just want a single digit, I can get that. I want to, I can get that. So that is how it is easy to just format strings, work with the. Uh, so that is why I'm emphasizing to keep the day object itself. So once you have the entire object, you can run all the utils, you can run all the formatting you want. It gets much easier. Another thing to take a note is, let's say, so right now in memory I am saving these 7 objects, right? So let's say I don't want it, I just want to save one object and derive values from it. So we can also implement that way. So what will happen is the marker which we are taking, right? So the main marker for the calendar, which is our entire orchestrating everything. So we can just have that one object, and instead of getting all the day objects in a week, we can just add a format function here, and let's say format it in a ddmmyy, and we can keep the strings. So instead of keeping the entire objects, we are just keeping strings, making it a bit lean. And then afterwards, when we want to do some processing on the UI part, so let's say we can again convert that string into a day object. It's a bit too much of optimization. Like these 7 objects hardly have any effect on the performance, but this is something we can do. So let's say if you are rendering 100 days, something like that, right? Or maybe a large list of days. In that case, you can do this. Instead of having all those objects, you are just keeping the lean strings, and whenever you are having some sort of operations, you are just converting that lean string into the object itself. So that is one way of doing things. Okay. So now let's move on to monthly calendar. So this is actually a common use case which we have when we say we want to implement a calendar. So again, we the same thing here. We have a marker which we control with these buttons, and all the dates are amazingly they present according to the scenario. So again, we have a today this thing marked here, highlighted. So just for testing, so let's say I want to change the today, I can do that. I can shift it to 18. So yeah, it's working quite fine. So let's say you want a calendar with which you want to have some default values, default markings and all that. So you can just take it in the props, pass it to the day object, it will initialize that. Quite a bit of customization is available once you have the logic part figured out. Okay, so again, so here is actually a bit a tricky part to construct the grid from the marker itself. So let's go through the code. Okay, so we are getting the marker. Then we want to know the start of the month, where exactly is the date, so we can add the extra padding dates from the previous month. Again, we need to find out the end of the month so that we can add the extra padding dates to the end of the month. Let's say my use case is that I don't want the end of the month. I just want to end where it the calendar is. I don't want to show the dates. So we can just keep the end dates part. But in this case, let's say I want to show what dates are upcoming. So I have to take the end date marker as well. Then okay, so we get total how many days are in a month, 30 days, 31, 28, whichever the number is. And then we start constructing the grid. So to construct the grid, so we can just ignore this part. So we are here. So let's say our, so the grid is basically a 2D array, uh, one array of weeks and then multiple weeks, right? So we are getting the day grid, and we are, let's say, initializing it to this thing if it's empty, and we are pushing the current date, and then we have some sort of flags to just render on the UI. So let's say if it's a previous month, we are shading it in a lighter shade. If it's the current one, we have the highlights and all that. And another one is the today flag. So as you can see, this marking which we have for today. So these flags you can push and work with those. So let's say we have yeah, let's say I comment this. Okay, so I have not tested this by commenting. Let's test it right on the screen. What happens? Nothing moves. Okay, so the thing is, we are looping through the entire days, which we are getting in the days in the month, and we are mapping those. We are adding some sort of padding to the start and ending to the start. So how do we determine the padding and ending? So that is quite easy. We just have to check the start date, right? And we just have to decrement from that, right? So generally you start I from 0, which is the start of your month. Instead of that, I'm getting the days which I want to add extra, and I just minus the I from that and then start from there itself. Again with the end date, it's the same. Once I reach the end of the month, I'm just adding the extra days which are remaining. So that you can see here. So why it's 6? Because it's basically so it's an index, right? It goes from 0 to 6. So and why it is 6 minus index? That is how you get the remaining this thing from the tree. So this is the first condition. If I equals 0, you are just marking this is previous one true for this thing. So even you can have some sort of extra logic that the previous dates are not clickable and the next dates are clickable. So with these two flags, you can manage those things. Then we have the another condition for the dates which are after the month, and then we have the condition for this month. So once our grid is ready, I mean that's all there it is. Now you have to just map the entire thing. Again the same logic for increment decrement. You are taking the marker, you are adding one unit of the selected unit. In this case it would be month, and in case of decrement it is the same. And these are just simple styles, which again the same this thing. So let's say I want to show the entire date, right? I'll have to expand this a bit. Something like this. So the advantage of keeping the entire date object is that whenever you want to make a change, you can make it easily. And having 30 objects in memory, it's not much performance drawback. Again, if you want to keep it lean, you can keep it lean, but you will have to work with the utils. You will have to write one util to convert the date back to the object, and one again object to the date string itself. So that's how easy it is to implement the calendar. A bit short, quite short code. At first, it seems like wow, calendar तो भाई ज़्यादा complex है. नहीं, it's not actually the case. The main important thing is having the marker, because a lot of time it happens that you start thinking you want to increment, decrement, and all that controls and all that. You might get lost into building the calendar. Just having a single marker which you manipulate and deriving all the other states from the marker is quite helpful. So that is how easy it is to build calendar. So let's dive deep in bit into Day.js, like what all things Day.js offers, and we can take a look into it. So here are quite a few tips when you start working with Day.js you might want to consider. The thing is, so if you take a look at the date object, it doesn't give that much utils functions. It's very basic. You get milliseconds, you get year, maybe you can do arithmetic on it. But again, it's error code, right? You are adding something, you are then again converting it back to date, and it might be happen that you are not considering the other edge cases like the days in a month and all that. So it's better to have some sort of library. Cool. So if you take a look at Day.js, it's quite similar to all the other libraries. If you're familiar with Moment, it's a great way of working with this. the main here is the manipulation. So whenever you are trying to do arithmetics with date, it's better to just use the utils which are provided with the library itself rather than you adding and subtracting manually. So there are like quite a few methods, simple add, subtract, and then the UTC. UTC. Okay, so that is just to get UTC. Other thing is the format. So the format function is quite useful. There is a lot of formatting options available, lot of customizations. You can escape some characters. You want some unique string to display, you can do that. Um, Another great thing of this DayJS this website is, let's say you want to try the DayJS library, right? So you will have to go to your custom code, uh, npm install, try that. But the other thing is that the console itself has the DayJS install, so that is just one amazing thing. You can just go there, you have the DayJS objects. Let's say I do toString, I get everything. Okay, the console very good. Let's say I want to, so let's go with today. We have a add. So to see, I have to make a string. So as you can see, we are getting the new dates which we are adding, subtracting. You can try it out here itself. That is one great thing. Just want to check out the library and that stuff. Another thing to notice is whenever you are trying to console log. So let's say when you are trying to build something, right? You are working with DJs. If you console log, it will give you this object. So it's not readable at all. You will try to figure out like what exactly is happening. So you might think of doing something like this, which we have already did, like djs.toString. But again, this is a bit inaccurate. So the thing is, you are working with dates. It's the DJs. What it does is it by default works with your local time. It doesn't work with UTC. So as you can see, it is giving me 6:22, right? But right now it's 11:50, roughly around that. So what will happen is, let's say you are building a calendar at 8 o'clock, right? And you are thinking, okay, आज तो 1 तारीख है, but it's showing you 2, and you are confused like what is exactly is happening, right? The object is correct. You also read the documentation that it's showing it works with local time, but when you are doing the toString, it's giving you this. So the other thing is just go with format method. So what format does is it will give you the correct date according to the local time which you are in. So let's say I want to take a look at the time also. I'll do this. $11:53. So I want AM PM. Right? Yeah. So these are quite a few utils and the nuances you might want to take a look at. So avoid using toString; it might create confusion. It's better to use format whenever you are displaying dates with DJs. And another thing is, yeah, you can try it out in the console itself. Very great to work with dates. So let's go here. Again, we have some amazing utils. You can just query with a date, like is the current date before my marker date, is it after, same or before, something like that. So quite a few useful utils available. So these useful utils, so let's say you want to add some sort of validation, some sort of locking mechanism on the calendar, you can do that with this. Again, internationalization is already built into this, so it becomes very easy. Quite a few plugins for this library also. Let's say you want some sort of calendar which is region specific, you want to work with that. So there are quite a few helper functions available for that. So let's say I want to have some Buddhist era formatting, so I can do that. Quite a unique thing. then again you can, so as we have done here, so we actually went with having a constant, like constant, we built a constant ourselves, and we declared a constant ourselves, and we just use that. Instead of that, you can use the inbuilt names which DHS provides. Has a bit of configuration. I just went with the easy method. Just get your 7 days and just map it there. It's easy. Again, same with the time. So let's say we have taken a look at the date. Let's say you want to manipulate time. It's again easy. You just get the day object and do the arithmetic with the object itself. Do not like avoid doing like converting the time into number. Then you're adding number to it. Then again converting back. Avoid doing that. It's just better to have arithmetics done on the object itself. Any errors or all that are already handled with in that thing. Again, as I mentioned, it by default day just works with your local time. If you want some sort of customization, you want to work with different time zones, you can do that very easily. So here is the default time zone plugin. So there are like plugins available. So this library is very tree shakeable. So what they have done is like every other not common functions and utils, they have just kept it separate. You just want to have that, import that, and enable the plugin. Easy way to enable the plugin is just extending whatever you have imported, and you can work with that. So that is how Day.js works, and that is how we have implemented Day.js to build our calendar. So it's quite easy, not nothing fancy here. Just get your marker date, work around with the marker itself, and you have your calendar here. So let's say if I change my marker to year. Again, you can have a drop down here which gets you the year directly. You can select the year, it changes accordingly, and everything works fine. All the dates are greatly aligned. So again, going through the DJS tips. So the website console which I showed you, the format string, yeah, instead of getting two string and creating confusion, it's just better to have the format util. And for arithmetic operations, as I mentioned, just go with manipulating dates itself rather than having the numbers to manipulate. And yeah, that's it. I would say yeah, it's that easy to build a calendar.